we start? I think we should start at Herrenchiemsee.
I can't see the displays until I've gotten past the counter.
Guten Tag.
Guten Tag.
Ist das die Ludwig Museum?
Ja, ja. Ludwig der Zweite von Bayern.
Ich hätte gern eine Eintrittskarte fürs Museum.
Ja, 8 Mark für eine Ganztagskarte. So,
Danke.
bitte.
July 3rd, 1863. Elizabeth, you can have no idea, dear cousin, how happy you made me. The hours recently passed with you in the railway carriage I consider among the happiest in my life. Never will their memory fade. You gave me permission to visit you at Ischl. If the time comes for this ardent hope to be fulfilled, I shall be of all men upon earth the most blessed. The feelings of sincere love and reverence and faithful attachment to you, which I cherished in my heart even as a boy, makes me imagine heaven upon earth and will be extinguished by death alone. I beg you with all my heart to forgive the contents of this letter, but I could not help myself. Ludwig. Elizabeth frequently gave Ludwig advice on royal conduct, hoping to protect him from unfavorable public opinion. March 1st, 1865. My dearest Eagle, you have not written me in a few months. I have missed you. I often try to imagine what you are doing. I hear tales that you have been on retreat and have not been seen in Munich for some time. I suspect it is this new friend you wrote up so mysteriously that takes you away from home. I hope you are enjoying yourself, my beloved, but I beg you to caution. The people need to see you at the throne. I also hesitate to suggest that what your officials do in your absence may not always be in your own best interest. You have always been a true king, but you must let the people see you to ensure that they don't forget that. E. Your dove. Ludwig's friends were concerned for his mental state long before his arrest. June 14th, 1878. My beloved Eagle, in your last letter you spoke so movingly of your torment that I was moved to tears. What is this torment? Why won't you confess to me what is truly troubling you? You must know that I would never despise you, no matter how horrible you believe your sins to be. Please do not write such barbs to my heart by even suggesting such things. If you do not wish to confess to me, at least tell me how I can aid you. I am always your true one, your dove. In this letter, dated November 1886, Elizabeth of Austria thanks Bishop Frank for his assistance in helping her fulfill Ludwig's last wishes. She writes that she knows it was an unusual request, but she believes Ludwig had reasons of his own for wishing it to be done. She hopes that his spirit finds peace at last. No further reference to this letter has ever been found. One can only speculate what the last wishes of a cornered and embattled Ludwig might have been. What were his last wishes? This place is giving me more questions than answers. She's beautiful. Ludwig is Prince Charming. He played the part well. Looks like it weighs a ton. Ludwig's Grand Master wardrobe from the Knights of St. George. He looks so regal. Why would he give up all of this pageantry and become a recluse? Ludwig is Grand Master of the Knights of St. George. The Knights of St. George was an aristocratic society dedicated to the acts of chivalry. Ludwig loved the medieval pageantry of the order in his early years, before his increasing reclusiveness drove him to abandon public appearances. Ludwig and Wagner. Ludwig loved the opera of his contemporary Richard Wagner. He helped support Wagner's music through much of his life. Ludwig considered Wagner a close friend, often calling him the great friend. Wagner encouraged this infatuation, some believe, for personal gain. Typical artist. Signets and sash pins from the Order of the Knights of St. George. These were worn on Ludwig's uniform, as befitted his rank of Grand Master. They are now the property of the Bavarian Crown Treasury. I wonder if these pins have any symbolic meaning. Even after Wagner's death, Ludwig still showed signs of obsession with the composer. This letter, written in 1882 by Ludwig to the conductor of the Munich Opera, instructs the conductor to make preparations for a new Wagner opera. The conductor went to see the king as instructed. When he arrived, Ludwig was ill and refused to see him. Nothing further was ever heard of this mysterious new opera. Was it a figment of an ill man's desperate wishes? Ludwig is offered a crown of laurels by the genius of immortal fame. 26 July, 1874. By the power of the lily, we shall have the strength to resist all temptations throughout the whole year. July 1875, solemn oath before the picture of the great king. Refrain for 3 months from all excitement. This oath has its binding power as well as its potency by de par le Roy, LNR, DPLR. What excitement! I need to see more of that diary. June 7th, 1886. A group of men arrive at Neuschwanstein Castle demanding to take the king in custody. With them is Dr. Guden, the doctor who had been in charge of Otto, the king's mentally ill brother. The men have an order for the king's arrest on the grounds of insanity. They are refused admittance by a brave group of farmers and local soldiers who have come to Ludwig's aid. They are forced to retreat to nearby Hohenschwangau. This is the first Ludwig hears of the conspiracy. Ludwig composes a pamphlet explaining the subversive acts of the conspirators and eloquently pleading with his people for aid. The pamphlet is smuggled out of Neuschwanstein and printed, but the pamphlets are seized before they can be distributed. June 12, 1886. Ludwig knows the conspirators will return. He despairs. He asks his servant for the keys to the tower. The servant, fearing the king intends suicide, says the key is lost. Unbeknownst to Ludwig, the conspirators arrive at the castle. This time, there is no one to stop them. Ludwig is lured from his bedroom to the entry hall of Neuschwanstein on pretense. There, he is taken into custody. Ludwig is taken by carriage from Neuschwanstein to Berg, where his brother Otto had long been imprisoned. This is a great blow to the king's state of mind. While on the way, the group stops at Seeshaupt to change horses. Ludwig asks to see the postmistress, Frau Vogel. She brings him a glass of water and he says something to her. She never reveals these last words to anyone. June 13th, 1886. At Berg, Ludwig seems cooperative and coherent. Dr. Guden writes to the government that he has Ludwig well under control. The two men go out for a walk, and Dr. Guden is so confident he dismisses the guards. When Ludwig and the doctor do not return after several hours, a search is undertaken. The bodies of the two men are found in the lake, drowned. Circumstances unknown. June 18th, 1886. Ludwig's funeral procession marches through the streets of Munich, followed by enormous crowds of mourners. The service is held at a packed St. Michael's church. Lightning strikes the church during the service, but no one is harmed. Ludwig's body is entombed in the Wittelsbach crypt at St. Michael's. His heart is placed in an urn in the pilgrimage chapel at Altading in the Wittelsbach tradition. The urn is shown to the right. His heart is in an urn. How bizarre. I have no idea what that says. Looks old, though.
This pamphlet states the truth, life and dying King Ludwig II. Civilian of the village, original reports, the last words are not good, readable.
Oh my God, that's the slave from my dream. Maybe Mrs. Smith will know what my dream meant. I have to ask someone. This thing is getting too weird. Ludwig embarking on his sleigh. The midnight sleigh rides. Ludwig went on long sleigh rides in the middle of the night, particularly in his later years. It is said that he suffered from insomnia, headaches, and toothaches, and the rides soothed his restlessness. The sight of the king's grand sleigh speeding through the countryside of the Alps often startled the peasants and became a superstitious omen of ill fortune. I can see why. But what was he doing out there at night? Ludwig's death mask. Wow. Ludwig's death mask. Wow. December 14th, 1881, Linderhof. Order another work by Jennings on the occult. Write urgently to Klug, saying that I insist that the stoppages by the banks cease. I want it, and therefore it must be done. Write very urgently. He must succeed at once, and then must report to me urgently. If I give orders to clear my room, doing so must not be postponed as it happened. Pencils must be pointed without special orders. The day after tomorrow, 1,000 marks. How is Louis now? I want to know whether he looks unhappy. How often have I said that the coffee must not come up boiling hot, so that it can only be drunk after standing an hour? If any more correspondence come from Louis, they are to be burnt immediately, but I am to be informed of their arrival. These are actual notes from Ludwig to his servants. They go far in showing the king's state of mind. They were smuggled out and used as evidence in compiling the order for Ludwig's arrest.
December 18th, 1881, Linderhof. Every day get up earlier for certain. See to that very particularly. Write it down. Remember that when the great friend arrives at Neuschwanstein, we retire to the hall. We are not to be disturbed. I will not tolerate interference or insubordination.
Guten Tag.
Guten Tag.
Im Museum ist einen Brief von Ludwig über eine neue Wagner-Oper.
Ja, ich kenne diesen Brief.
Wo kann ich mehr von dieser Wagner-Oper sehen?
Ja, ich weiß nichts über Wagner. Das hier ist kein Wagner-Museum.
Ja, ich weiß.
In Bayreuth befindet sich ein Wagner-Museum. Versuchen Sie es halt doch, ne?
Bayreuth. Danke.
Richard Wagner.
Ludwig. The original diary is kept in the Royal Archives. A few entries are shown on the opposite wall.
I've got to see that diary.
Guten Tag.
Guten Tag.
Ludwigs Tagebuch im Museum?
Ja,
Wo kann ich Ludwigs Tagebuch hier anschauen?
die Tagebücher sind ganz persönlich. Die sind in den königlichen Archiven. Niemand darf die lesen.
Aber
Nein, niemand darf die lesen.
danke.
Let's check. Wow. Now we are ready to discover other locations. I think because this was the main theme in Herrenchiemsee, the new Wagner opera, we should go to the Wagner Museum in Bayreuth, which is a few hours driving
Grüß Gott.
Guten
in the
Tag.
direction of
Ist
the
das die Wagner Museum?
Ja, you're an American, aren't you? I'm afraid the house is closed this time of year. It will be open next month.
Crap.
You are interested in Wagner?
Very interested. Very recently very interested.
Sure. Most of the house is closed for cleaning, but a few rooms are open. I shouldn't let you probably, but if it is only you, you are alone, aren't you?
Endlessly.
Come in and look over.
That's very generous. What do I owe you?
Georg Immerding. It's only a few displays. Besides, I wouldn't be much of a shining knight if I charged you.
Thanks, Georg. My name is Grace.
Hello. Have a good time.
Oh la la.
Wagner's piano. On this piano, the maestro composed his later operas, including The Ring.
So, the later operas.
Franz Liszt, composer and Cosima Wagner's father.
His father-in-law?
Richard Wagner.
An old sofa. Wagner's death mask.
In hand.
It looks rather simple considering the grandiose stuff Wagner composed here. Wagner's desk, exactly as it was on the day he died. Wagner's... It looks rather simple considering the grandiose stuff Wagner composed here.
Ludwig as the classical Greek hero. A portrait given as a gift from Ludwig to Wagner. Ludwig's death mask.
June 10th, 1881, Munich residence. Great friend. I am writing to you in the middle of the night. My blood is pounding too wildly for sleep. Tonight's performance, how can I describe it? I am unsure whether to be terrified or thrilled. Perhaps I even feel hopeful. If it is hope, you have given it to me, my friend, for the first time in years. We must speak. Something happened during the music tonight, but I must have your absolute confidence. As you love me, come at once. Your devoted king, Ludwig. July 1882. Great and beloved king, Monsieur Beaujolais and I have finished the diagram. We checked the figures many times, and Monsieur is confident that it will work. 8 identical fixtures are to be made from the diagram and placed in the theater exactly as specified. I'm sending the diagram with your courier. Be full of hope and have courage. All will be well. Your own, Wagner. The great patron himself.
This must be a model of Wagner's own theater, here in Bayreuth. Opera costumes. These look like production designs. These look like production designs. These look like production designs.
What are you doing here if the museum is closed?
They always like to have a caretaker here. It's a good job for me. I can soak in the atmosphere of the maestro while I compose.
What are you composing?
This? Oh, a new arrangement. One of Wagner's pieces.
For the Bayreuth Opera?
No. I am only a student at the university. I study music, composition, conducting.
Is there much of a call for conductors in Europe?
Ask my brother. He is the conductor for the Munich Opera.
Well, that's convenient. Does that mean you get free opera tickets?
Yes. I get a week's pass to the Opernfestspiele, the opera festival in Munich. It starts in a few months.
Hope I'm still around to see it.
Come with me if you like. If you're still around, I can go backstage and all sorts of things.
I'd love that. If I'm still in Germany, I'll call you, all right?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, and the sugar pie becomes clearly a very interested groupie.
Tell me about Wagner.
He was a character. He spent most of his life trying to convince rich patrons to subsidize his work. Unfortunately, he had expensive tastes. You see, he believed that someone of his genius deserved to live well. Can't argue with that.
But Ludwig II supported him, didn't he?
Yeah, sure, but Ludwig came along very late in Wagner's life. By then, he had already been run out of Venice and most major cities because of debt. Ludwig saved him. And the music. Best thing Ludwig ever did.
Do you know anything about that letter from Wagner to Ludwig in the display case? The one about the diagram?
Ah, no. Some sort of equipment for Ludwig's theater. But I don't know why Wagner would have cared about this. If he was worried about any theater, you would think it would have been his own theater, here, in Bayreuth.
Have you ever heard about the letter that Ludwig wrote to the Munich conductor in 1882 telling him to prepare for a new Wagner opera?
You're full of surprises for an American.
What do you know about it?
No one knows anything about it. It's like a treasure map, you know. It's probably a complete fairy tale, but it does make you wonder.
You have no idea what it could have referred to? Maybe something that Wagner was working on with Ludwig?
If there was, there's no trace of it. Except perhaps in the dreams of unemployed music students.
Wagner souvenirs. Don't think I need any of those. Wagner souvenirs. Don't think I need any of those.
What's that book in the case?
Cosima Wagner's journal is locked up for preservation.
I don't have anything to ask Georg about at the moment.
Perhaps we missed something out.
Wagner souvenirs. Don't think I need any of those. Wagner's piano. On this piano, the maestro composed his later operas, including The Ring. The death of Wagner. On Ash Wednesday, 1883, Wagner suffered a heart attack in a Venetian gondola on the way to Saint Michel. His wife and the gondolier carried him into a church where he regained consciousness. Wagner died 4 days later on this sofa. Wagner died on that sofa. That's kind of creepy. I don't have anything to ask Georg about at the moment.
So perhaps we return further running of the events. But for now we can visit New Schwanstein.
I don't think the guards want to be bothered while on duty.
Our tour begins in the entry hall. Ludwig II lived from 1845 to 1886. He assumed the Bavarian throne at the age of 18 when his father died. Ludwig's passion was building castles. He built 3 during his lifetime: Linderhof, Herrenchiemsee, and Neuschwanstein. Plans. In addition to his obsession with building, Ludwig also had a passion for classical heroic German mythology, a taste he shared with the German opera composer Richard Wagner. Neuschwanstein is decorated throughout with themes from these stories, most of which directly relate to Wagner's operas.
These scenes seem to tell a story, but I have no idea what story. These scenes seem to tell a story, but I have no idea what story.
The paintings in this room are from the Siegfried saga. The paintings in this room are from the Siegfried saga. You are now standing in the king's bedroom. The theme of the bedroom is Tristan and Isolde, the tragic love story retold in Wagner's opera. The opera was given its first performance in Munich in 1865, and a 20-year-old Ludwig attended. This is probably the most elaborate and expensive bedroom ever created. It took 14 woodcarvers 4.5 years to create this room. It was this kind of extravagance that bankrupted the king. In the years before his death, he found it increasingly difficult to find money from any source.
Did they have running water in 1886?
The richly carved bed, with its canopy, resembles a Gothic building in its turrets. The bed's draperies were handmade by dozens of Bavarian seamstresses.
Did they have running water in 1886? Did they have running water in 1886? Maybe Ludwig thought all this luxury would help him sleep. Maybe Ludwig thought all this luxury would help him sleep.
Scenes from the opera Tristan and Isolde. The washstand actually worked by bringing in water from a stream above the castle. You are now standing in the king's bedroom. The theme of the bedroom is Tristan and Isolde, the tragic love story retold in Wagner's opera. The opera was given its first performance in Munich in 1865, and a 20-year-old Ludwig attended. This is probably the most elaborate and expensive bedroom ever created. It took 14 woodcarvers 4.5 years to create this room. It was this kind of extravagance that bankrupted the king. In the years before his death, he found it increasingly difficult to find money from any source.
That's an unusual depiction of the Madonna.
This is Ludwig's private chapel. The king was a devout Catholic, as were all of the Wittelsbacher rulers. They supported the Roman Church even when other European countries were dominated by Protestantism.
It's a beautiful crucifix, ivory and gold.
A king saint? I wonder if Ludwig pictured himself that way, or maybe he just wanted to be that way.
The paintings above the altar depict St. Louis surrounded by the seraphim. An interesting side note. For a period of about a year, the Louis images in all 3 castles were ordered to be covered up with black cloth on the unfathomable whim of the king. The stained glass window depicts St. Louis receiving the last sacraments. This is the king's living room. The walls are decorated with scenes from the Lohengrin saga. The king first saw Wagner's opera Lohengrin when he was 16, and it so affected him that he considered it a form of enlightenment. The tragedy of Lohengrin was his essential loneliness. This, too, was Ludwig's own fate. Ludwig withdrew more and more into his fantasy world of epic heroes and absolute monarchy. An ideal he was determined to create in his castles if he could not have it in his real life. He only wanted to be alone with his dreams, so much so that even his servants were kept at a distance and were not allowed to look at him.
What were you afraid they'd see? These linens look seriously expensive and seriously old. I'm surprised people don't sit in these chairs when the guard's not looking.
The miracle of the Grail.
More swans.
The swan motif is featured throughout the castle, but it is particularly prominent in this room. Both the swan and the lily were symbols Ludwig associated with himself. They represented his ideals of majesty and purity. The painting behind the swan shows Lohengrin's arrival. This is a reproduction of the grotto from the Tannhäuser Saga. In such places, Ludwig could pretend he was one of his beloved mythic heroes. As the grotto personifies, the castles were solitary playgrounds built for Ludwig alone. He believed the masses were too coarse to appreciate fine art, and he seldom entertained guests. In fact, Ludwig had a standing order that upon his death, the castles were to be destroyed. Fortunately, the estate was in such debt that the castles were opened for paying tours only weeks after Ludwig's death. They haven't closed since. It is one of the great ironies of Ludwig's story that the castles that he was thought insane for building are now considered Bavaria's finest treasures. They have paid for their construction many times over.
I can almost picture Ludwig in here. I wonder what he really dreamt about in this room.
This is the king's study. Ludwig spent much time at his desk, writing letters, drawing up plans for his projects, and studying his favorite authors. He loved poetry, history, and the classics. In later years, he also studied the occult. What affairs of state he did reluctantly attend to were generally attended to alone at his desk in writing. His reluctance to meet with his heads of state and perform the duties of the king were one of the reasons for the charges brought against him in 1886. But Ludwig dreamt of true kingship and a true monarchy, and the small powers left to him after Bavaria succeeded power to Prussia only incited his disdain and frustration. The study paintings depict scenes from the Tannhäuser Saga and the Wartburg Castle. The study paintings depict scenes from the Tannhäuser Saga and the Wartburg Castle. The study paintings depict scenes from the Tannhäuser Saga and the Wartburg Castle.
I doubt there's anything left in there now. Besides, the guard would kill me if I touched it. I wonder why he was studying the occult before he died.
This is the final room of our tour, the Singers' Hall. It was modeled after the Singers' Hall of the Wartburg Castle, where minstrel competitions were held in the 13th century. The hall was built for small private concerts, but Ludwig himself never gave one here. It is said that during the last few years of Wagner's life, he came to Neuschwanstein frequently and performed for the king alone in this room. The hall is probably best known for its enigmatic wolf paintings. The original paintings were from the Parsifal saga, but in 1882, Ludwig had them replaced, supplying the description and titles of the new paintings himself. While all the other rooms in the castle show scenes from Wagner's operas, the scenes in this room are not from any opera that anyone can identify. It is yet another of the many mysteries associated with the life of the fairy tale king.
Why would Ludwig have wolf paintings in his castle?
Engelhart and the Blacksmith. Engelhart courts Hildegunde. The hunters track down Engelhart and Hildegunde. The wedding feast of Hildegunde and the Baron. The death of Engelhart.
Nice view of the Alps.
Ludwig's childhood castle, Hohenschwangau, is visible from the lookout in the Singers' Hall.
Gerda?
Yes.
Have you heard from Gabriel at all?
No, Grace, I'm sorry.
Never mind.
Nothing else I can use in the biography section.
There's nothing else on werewolves in the occult section.
I'm not sure what other case books would be relevant.
A ticket to the Ludwig Museum.
I'm not sure why I'd want to call the biographies public. I'll write to Gabriel, soon as I have enough info to blow his little investigation out of the water.
Are the Smiths in their room?
Ja, I believe so.
Could you ask them to come down, please?
Ja, natürlich.
Now you just tell Merle what's going on.
I had a dream last night. I didn't remember it at first, but I saw something today at one of the museums.
What was the dream?
I was being chased in the woods by wolves. And I saw a sleigh. Ludwig was inside. He pulled me up, and I thought I was safe. But then he turned into a wolf.
So what do you think, Mother?
A dream of rescue is a spiritual guide dream. The High Priestess in Gabriel's cards must be linked to Ludwig somehow.
What do the wolves represent?
I'm a psychic, dear, not Freud. But the warning I got was about the black wolf, wasn't it? And the wolves in the dream. It must be the same danger.
It's so frustrating. The more I find out, the more questions I have.
Why don't you try a little communicating of your own? Ludwig's the link. Appeal to him. The answers may not come right away, but at least you'll give the guide something specific to say the next time she contacts you.
Isn't there any way that you could, do a psychic reading on Ludwig or something?
To tell you the truth, I've been trying all day to make contact. But I only feel great despair. Ludwig's soul is not at peace.
I'd better go.
Anytime you need us, stop by.
And be careful now.
Thanks. Have you ever heard about the wolf panels in the Singers' Hall at Neuschwanstein?
Did my brother send you here?
No.
Probably not. It's only the letter to the conductor, the wolf panels. Oh, my brother thinks I am crazy because of all my theories.
What theories?
This is Quatsch. If there was a lost opera, a lost Wagner opera, and if one could find it, to a conductor, this would be like finding King Tut's tomb. But people have looked for it before. If it ever existed, it is gone forever. My brother says I waste my time even thinking about it.
I'm curious. Is there any other information that points to the lost opera besides Ludwig's letter and the wolf panels?
It's nothing. I'm not even supposed to have seen it. You see, my brother says that Wagner was too egotistical to have produced a lost opera. If he was working on something new, every person in Bayreuth would have heard about it. On the other hand, it was in Ludwig's character to have wanted a private opera.
But it wouldn't have been private. Ludwig's letter shows he intended it to be played in Munich.
Yes, but that it would get so far without Wagner telling others? Why keep it a secret?
Maybe there was a very good reason for secrecy.
For example?
Like... Never mind.
I don't have anything to ask Georg about at the moment. I'm not sure Georg would want to see that. Cosima was Wagner's wife, I think. She probably just talks about him in her journal. It looks like an architectural drawing of a theater. The Wittelsbacher Theater, München. Every square inch is measured. It's a letter from a Monsieur Beaujolais, dated September 1881. Looks like he's discussing acoustics and sound waves, and crystals. Wasn't Wagner's Bayreuth Theater already built? Why would Wagner be worrying about acoustics? Wagner's desk, exactly as it was on the day he died. It looks rather simple considering the grandiose... I don't have anything to ask Georg about at the...